Last weekend I tested 3 ways of producing faux leather from paper. I used very basic supplies and I've never done it before, but I was amazed and truly delighted at the results. I did make a couple of interesting decisions when I was experimenting, and I'm not calling those mistakes because I still learned something and I will still use what I made. I filmed the process, so today I'm sharing all of that and of course all of the results, including what worked and what didn't. And I've put the tips and the lessons into this free resource sheet for you. This is over on Pinterest along with about 80 others. And I share these for free because I just want us all to have as much fun as I do playing with paper at an affordable cost. I think you can see from today's video that I'm really in a creative mood, and that's in no small part down to the mood lift I've been getting from Craftsy, who I am delighted to say is the sponsor of today's video. In case you don't know, Craftsy is your online resource for all things creative. The categories of the classes are what I would expect to be of interest to my fellow crafters and creators. So they have paper craft and art classes, they have sewing and embroidery, they have quilting and painting, and they even have baking and photography. And the more I use Instagram and other social media, the more I'm interested in classes outside of my junk journaling space, like photography, and I particularly like baking in the autumn and winter when the weather changes. Take the dog for a walk, go outside, come back and take a baking class. So I took a class called New Approaches to Mixed Media Materials, led by Carol Nelson. And this class stood out for me when I was scrolling through and looking for ones that really piqued my interest, because I felt that although the techniques gave me new ideas, it didn't feel a million miles away from our world of junk journaling. And I wouldn't need a whole load of new materials to try out what Carol was sharing. I learned that you can look around you for everyday objects, like I think it's a piece of sink protector that she cut down. She got it from the dollar store, and she used it to make raised textured shapes on paper instead of using bought stencils. Now personally I don't have a lot of stencils, but I love ideas which mean I don't have to go and buy stuff. I've got a craft room full of stuff and I don't need more stuff. In all of the categories that I've mentioned, Craftsy keeps adding new classes, which I think we all love. We need it to stay fresh, don't we? And you can even connect with fellow makers to ask you questions and share your ideas. So, the first 1,000 of you to click in that link down below in the video description box will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. This is valid for new members only, so check it out and let's go and make some faux leather. So I started off the weekend by using tissue paper because I already have it from, I think, when I was practicing printing on vellum. So I have the results of those and they are so good that I really want to recreate them on paper. Look at this, I'll show you in detail. And that's what I'm going to do first. Then I'm going to share the footage I took real time when I was going through more experimentation on the subsequent couple of days of the weekend. Basically, I expanded the supplies that I was using beyond tissue paper. So I added more colours. I used different paints, not just watercolour, I used acrylic as well. And I experimented with brown paper and also printables or digitals, whatever you want to call them. And the results for all of them are absolutely fantastic. So I will share all of that. And at the end of the video, I'll show you in detail what has happened to those pieces of tissue paper. I am obsessed. I'm going to use them to make some journals, and I think you'll be obsessed too. So we're going to recreate the tissue papers, and just to whet your appetite, this is what they look like. I'll give you a closer analysis at the end of the video, but they do look like leather and they feel amazing. I even remembered when I made them to write notes on, so I'll do my best to recreate these as best possible. The first one was just very simple glue and water mix to test that balance, the ratio of glue to water. You can perhaps see a tiny bit of gold in this. I had gold on the brush that I used. So for this I'm using just a plastic tub, and I've already got some water in it, a small amount. I've not measured it. I've got a brush that I've found to be useful because I can dab flat, so better than a brush that's like that with a round set of bristles. And I'm just using some very basic school glue. This is Arteza that I was gifted some time ago. So I'll mix first the glue and water exactly as I did it, and maybe when I get to a later stage in the video I'll start talking about some of the lessons I've learnt, but I'll just recreate what I did. Let's see if we can even just get this out. So the ratio that I started with was about 1 part glue to 3 parts water. I didn't know whether that was going to be right, but it has yielded a lovely result, so let's just try to recreate that. Do you think that's about 1 to 3? It's coming out very slowly. I think that's about right. And we create, by mixing, a really disgusting supply. It looks revolting, to be honest. I don't want to say what it looks like. You can make your own decision on that. One of the reasons I did this project was to use up some of the things I've got, and some time ago I produced a video on how to print on vellum in 5 easy steps, and for that I think I bought some basic, it's actually tissue paper, it's described as vellum, and some of these are thicker, and then I've recently just received as a freebie some tissue paper, and this is even cheaper and a bit more yellow. I don't know if you can see the difference in those two, that this one's coming up just a bit more creamy. So this, because it already feels like it would go quite folded and show the creases well, I just took 4 pieces of this and I screwed them up. Nicely, firmly, get lots of creases, and I did that 4 times, not difficult. There is actually a slightly shiny side, and on each of these occasions I've put the shiny side face down, and that's relevant when we come to letting these dry. But let's just cover one of these with our liquid, and the first example here I dried on a plastic bag. So this is the plastic bag that I used. You can see it's already got the ends of the previous experiment under there. I've folded it over so I don't completely have a mess, and I'm going to just do exactly what I did last time, get some of this mixture on here. It dries quite quickly, so you want to get a fair amount on. And I'm going to also cover what I'll call the back, the slightly shinier side, all over. So this is just our base. This is our science experiment where we don't use colour, we just use the basics and see what the glue and water does. Fold that, I'll turn it over, place it where I've put some of the liquid on the plastic bag, and that's just to make sure that it stays nice and wet. And then get a bit more on the front. It's a bit easier to spread it when it's already wet. And that's 1 sheet of our tissue paper wetted, and that's all I did. And I've got some little lines, nothing of great interest, and there's a bit less of the gold going to be on this, because I already had gold mixed into my brush before. In fact, what I'm going to do, because it's all nice and wet and I need a bit more space, is just move that across. So we'll park that there because I want a bit more space over here for my next sheet. I've added a bit more water, so I need a bit more glue, and I think it comes out of this one a bit faster. Oh yes, there we go. That's what, you can see I'm not measuring, but that looks a lot better. And I'm now going to add some colour, because that's what I did on my next sample. I'm going to park it on a plastic bag. I need to add some paint, and I need to add some of my acrylic gold metallic. My colour is just watercolour. It's called Bordeaux Red. Park a bit of that in there. Good way to use your watercolours. Mix that in. And I'm also going to add, I happen to have a small bottle of, it's Stamperia, very kindly gifted acrylic gold. It's called Super Gold. Add some of that. Give that a mix. And I don't mind if things are not completely mixed, because you get these little striations in your tissue paper result, almost from a bit of marbling of the paint. Screwed up piece of tissue paper. Get some paint on my plastic bag to make sure it stays nice and damp, and I think it helps with the creases. Shinier side down. And then paint this side. I find that if you put your brush flat rather than like this, it helps just build a few of those little folds in the paper rather than stamping them out. And that helps to bring out the leather effect, the faux leather. I can actually see a little bit of the gold metallic wandering around there. So I want to get that out of the way. I'll park that behind me for drying. So the next one, I believe I dried it on the back of this. It's just a bag. I'm just using the fact that it's plastic. So this is the one that I'm recreating. I can see a bit of the gold in it, and it's the one that has shiny behind. So paint on my decoration. It looks a bit pinker, this, than the brown that's come out in the tissue paper that's already dried. I do think I'm using the same watercolour paint, but I'm just doubting myself a bit here, and I wonder whether it had a little bit of brown in it, but we'll see. Plenty on there. Screwed up piece of tissue paper, shiny side down. Mop up what I've got on there and get a load of this on. Oh, I've got a lovely element there of unmixed, just here, unmixed pigment, unmixed watercolour. That's really nice. I think I might have put a tiny bit of blue in the water, although I was always concerned that it would turn purple, so maybe I didn't. It's testing my memory. I should have filmed it at the time. There we go. And I can see in this one more of the leather-like folds and creases, the ups and downs of the tissue paper. And the last one I did, this has got a bit more gold in it, and I dried it on the back of a book, because this is a bit, you know, it's hard to stick stuff to, but it's not the same as the Christmas decoration supply, the plastic here, and it's definitely different from plastic paper. I'm going off piste here. I've got a little bit of burnt umber. I'm just going to add that and see what happens. Yeah, it's coming out a deeper brown. And I'm going to have a bit more gold. Have a lot of fun playing with your paints and your colours. Looks lovely and chocolatey. Excellent. Right, that's going on the back of here. Now I can see that because I've added the watercolour paint, it's thickened my glue mixture. So it's not just colour you're adding when you're playing with these mixes, it seems that you're also changing the thickness of your glue and water mix. And don't worry, I won't waste this. This will go on all sorts of different supplies and pieces of paper. Lots more examples to come as well. I was feeling very creative and just felt like experimenting. So I've got my fourth piece of paper on the back of a book. We'll do what we did last time, shiny side down. I think that's that side. Yep, not easy to tell. Get that on there. And cover it. And I don't think it matters if I've got lots on. All I did was give it longer to dry, but I'll show you what happens. I did take some footage at an interim stage as the different samples were drying so that I could see what was happening. I peeped in. I've got bits of unmixed watercolour, the brown, in my brush somehow, and then that is adding deeper elements in certain areas as I just use the flat side of the brush to pat that down. And I can also see a little bit of pooling of the metallic gold, so that's absolutely stunning. Very satisfying. Let me just show you that. I'll take you through these 4 tissue paper examples when they're dry, but first I'm going to make some others using brown paper and printables. So for this one I used Amazon packaging paper, basically an Amazon brown paper bag. I softened the brown paper with hair conditioner, and I'll show you me using that on another example shortly. I also smooshed across it, so you see these brown bits and the pooling. I smooshed across it with a brown ink pad, and I put quite a lot of the glue mix on. It's quite pink. I wasn't really sure whether I liked that. So I used it up on this other piece of tissue paper, which I embedded with baby oil first and then liberally daubed all of that lovely glue mix on top. And even though it looks a little bit ugly at the moment, they dry fantastically well. So I will show you these examples when they're dry. I decided to see what it would look like if I added some dark brown to the paint. So this is just some brown watercolour paint that I've added from a tube, and although I am mixing it in, I'm not totally integrating it. You can see the marbling effect here, and that does come through on the tissue paper that I'm about to use. I'm also testing out this plastic wrapping again. So with tissue paper, which I'm scrunching up, I'm going to add a liberal quantity to that acetate plastic so that we can see some of that shiny effect come through again. And you can see the marbling effect here, so it's not totally mixed in. I'm going to daub this all over that plastic acetate as I did before. I'm pressing the tissue paper flat down onto that surface, and then I'm daubing a liberal quantity of the mixture all over, using the side of the brush as I mentioned earlier. And you can see the leather effect coming through. You can see the ups and downs of the tissue paper, which become more apparent as you add that glue mixture. I really like it, and I think this one's really benefiting from adding the brown watercolour paint to that earlier pink mix. I wanted to share what I did with baby oil. So if you scrunch it up and then pull it out, the texture of the tissue paper seems to change a bit. It becomes quite pliable. You'll get it over your hands, but I don't think that matters. So I flattened it out, and I thought I would add a liberal quantity of the glue mix to it. It doesn't go in very well. I think the downside of baby oil compared with hair conditioner is that this very much resists the liquid. I guess it's not surprising when you think about it, but I wanted to experiment, and that's what this is all about. You can see as I'm daubing the brush over the tissue paper that it just isn't sinking in. It's attracting some of the colour, but no way is it doing anything near what it did without the baby oil in it. But I was curious to see what effect it would have when it dried, and we'll see that a little bit later. I did both sides, so I turned it over, and then just for good effect, I thought I would just pour some on. Now I did put a lot on, and probably with all of these examples, I've used quite a lot. You might want to tone that down a bit, but the purpose of this was experimentation and just to see what happens. So this is what I did, and you'll see the result shortly. I laid them all out behind me, so this one's now on some brown paper. The earlier tissue paper example is drying with a very big pool of paint there, and the brown paper one is drying probably a little bit better. I like the effect that I'm seeing on that. I really fancied doing a tissue paper example on the book using the darker coloured glue paste that I've mixed up rather than the paler one earlier. So I scrunched up another piece of tissue paper. It's looking lovely and deep now. Very berry-like, I think. Almost deep chocolate. And I just daubed that, again fairly liberally, over this large book. I put the shiny side of the tissue paper down onto the book to absorb some of that paste. And I added plenty more of the mixture on top. Now this one, as you can probably see at the edges, has got a little bit of copper acrylic paint in it. And that is just stunning when it dries. You can't entirely predict what you're going to get from the wet stage. I would say that's a key lesson. So with all of these, I think it's great to just experiment and enjoy the process, but then just be delighted when you see the finished result. And it really was the previous example that gave me the idea of using a vintage style printable as the base. So I printed one off. It's got letters, lovely old style letters on the front here. I screwed it up a lot. This is 90 GSM paper, so it's not the thinnest copy paper. And when you screw it up a lot, the paper does start to soften. But I also thought I would help some of those ridges become more apparent when the colour of the paint leaks into them, by scratching them with this block nail file. It's not particularly gritty, so it's quite a delicate one. I worked around it slowly and then I thought I need to just scrub a bit, so I gave it a little bit of more work, really just distressing the paper a little bit. And then the usual process, put the paint all over it, put the gluey painty mixture all over it. And at this stage what I've got is this sumptuous, actually quite thick, well mixed glue paste that's got deep dark chocolatey browns in it, and I was starting to get quite excited. I think this, for me, there's a lesson, which is make the glue paste a little bit thicker and add a little bit more colour than I did at the start, but you know, it's fun to learn. And I like the red brown colour, because for me that really does have the essence of leather about it as it dries, and we'll see that in a few minutes. I set it to dry on my large piece of brown paper behind me, and you can still see some of those little bits of copper paint. You can see the script writing through it, and you can definitely see the creases. I think it has helped to give it a bit of a scrub with the nail file. I've noticed that as I check these, and they've only been down here about 10 minutes, they're all starting to do a little bit of pooling like this. And I haven't got a big enough table that's got nothing on it to lay them all out flat, so it's not surprising that the pooling's happening. But what I'm doing every now and again, if I show you maybe with this one here, this is the one I think that's got baby oil in it. Every now and again what I'm doing is just picking up a corner and just helping it to run, and gradually I'm getting less and less liquid, so it is drying off, but I think it's probably going to take a while. The other thing I've done with this one here that's based on the brown paper is, because I'm worried it might stick, obviously we've got glue in the liquid, I'm just lifting it to test how sticky it's gone, and I will use that piece behind. It's looking rather gloopy and lovely. This one's got a really big amount of pooling in it. I don't mind as long as it does dry. Should we give it a bit of a lift? And that can run over there. And I love that, the little rivulets. You get some very natural movement on the paper, and I think that helps with the leather effect. This one's gone a bit scary. Look how dark it is. Kind of Halloweenish. You've got that deep purple, and this one in particular, along with the pink of this one, just reminds you of the kind of leather tables that you see in old houses. If you go around maybe a house in England that's a few hundred years old, and they have a desk with a writing area. It feels like the sort of blotting paper area that you might see. It'd be interesting to see how that turns out when it's dry. Really like that. I've just got to be careful that I don't get any of this gloopy runny stuff on the carpet, because that would be just a little bit unfortunate. Really like that one drying at the back. Right, I've still got a little bit of PVA glue that looks purple, and I don't want to waste it. It's got these elements of copper acrylic paint in it that haven't disintegrated into the rest of the PVA and water mix, and I'm okay with that because when it goes on here it might look interesting, but I don't want to waste it, so I'm just going to have a go with one last piece of paper. So I've got another printable that I'd already printed. It's 90 GSM paper, so it's actually quite stiff, and I want lots of folds in it, so I'm just going to squidge that down. I wonder if there's another variable that we can test here. Let's try a little bit of, so this is hair conditioner. I'm going to soften the paper to start with. Let's see if it does soften it. Smells nice. Does it soak in? Soaks in a bit. Oh, that's lovely. That's so nice. Right, I didn't put a lot on. Yeah, that's made quite a difference. It's definitely softened it. Fold it in on itself, then it catches the spare. Yeah, it's really working. That's really nice. It's turned into, it feels like fabric. So let's see what happens. It's quite sticky from the conditioner. It's not evenly distributed, so the effects might be different. There's more of it here than over here, but let's see what happens if I add our PVA and water mix enhanced with paint. Go for the dab, and I've got one space on the window ledge to put this, so all of these samples can sit there to dry, and we'll see what they look like in a couple of hours. Well, that's quite good. I've managed to use it up. We'll just empty that. Ooh, lovely. So I've got some little copper blobs of acrylic paint that hadn't mixed, so I'm kind of bursting them, and they're releasing pigment, which obviously isn't evenly distributed with the rest of the purple. I'm getting a bit of a variation. I'll show you in a second. So I've got blue printed digital behind on 90 GSM paper, a very good amount of the roughly 1:1 PVA glue and water, and we gave the paper a softening with a small amount of hair conditioner, and that definitely turned it into a more fabric feel. So we'll see how that looks in a few hours. So I'm back the next day, and I've come in to see what the results are like. I did have a little peek last night, and I did a tiny bit of peeling back the corners just to help them not stick to whatever they were sticking to. I'll tell you and show you a little bit more about that in a minute, but I thought what we could do is just have a look at where they're at the moment and see what we're learning. So where should we begin? Why don't we start with this big one here. So this is looking good, but not surprisingly we've still got these little wells of liquid really that doesn't look like it's dried. If I touch it, there's still a little bit of liquid there, but I think it will dry. So this one was a paper bag, I think, that I tore up. I really like the colour. Let's have a closer look. And the distribution of the colour and all those little creases I think look wonderful. Maybe I'd want it to be a little bit darker. That's one thought, but I do really like it, and I think once this is dried it's going to work really well. I've got the option of adding a coat of something on top. I could think about that. We'll see. We'll have a little play. So this one down here is tissue paper, and if you remember, this had a whole load of liquid sitting on top of it. In fact, you can see that some of it's run. It's a good job it's been caught by the bag here, the plastic bag underneath. Again, what do we think? I really like this. Look, we've got almost like little rivers that have run, and we've got colour. That copper's coming through. I've still got some that needs to dry, and I'm going to leave it and let it do it. One comment, one learning is that using this plastic bag underneath is incredibly helpful. So it's easy to tear it back off it. And in fact, let's have a little look at what's going on behind. Oh, those are gorgeous, aren't they? I guess what you could do is decide whether you want to show the front or the back. What's really interesting is when it's been drying, touching the plastic, you get this very shiny effect. Let's see what it's like down here. Oh yeah. Yeah, we've got a bit more of it there. There you can see. So very, very interesting. Right, let's have a look at this little one. So this has come out a lot darker, and I'm not sure it's going to separate from the paper behind. Not a surprise, but this is an experiment, so that's what it's about. What I really like about this one is the depth of colour. We've got these larger areas with colour that's different from the recesses here. Does it peel away? I don't think it's going to. No, it's stuck. So what I'd do with this, I'm certainly not going to throw it out. I'd embrace the fact that it's stuck to the brown paper behind and just use that as an extra strengthener and see if I could turn that into maybe a journal cover as it is. I really like that one. It's crispy. It's crispier, so not as pliable. So this one's obviously got the foldability, but obviously is very, very thin, the tissue paper. And you'd want to back that onto something probably, or you could use that as the cover on maybe a porthole pocket. So cut out a circle and use that as your window. That one I would definitely use as a journal cover. It's just sumptuous. And then this little one, again, it's very different. We've got dark colour. So this has been drying on. It's a set of Christmas decorations of some form that I haven't used. I will do at some point. And it's tissue paper. But look at that pattern. It's very organic, isn't it? It just feels beautiful as well, and it's dried quite well. What's really interesting, I had a little peek. Look at this. Look at that. Look at the shine. I almost want to use both sides. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll make several of these, and then we've got the opportunity to use the front and the back. Peels off okay, not a problem. Oh, that's just stunning. I think that's amazing. I've got 3 more drying on the windowsill. Yep, 3. So I'll just bring those over and we can have a look at the results there. So this is the one that's been drying on a large book, and I've been hopeful that by helping it to dry or letting it dry on the book cover, which is a little bit glossy, it wouldn't stick. And I was so concerned. I had a little peek last night and it was doing okay. So let's just have a go at peel back. Yeah, that seems to be working, and you can see, isn't that absolutely amazing, that effect? It's stunning. I've got to do something showing that side. I would say that it's quite thin, so this one is tissue paper, and you can see we've got these elements of that copper acrylic paint coming through, which is just amazing. How does that look on the other side? Yeah, you can see some of it on that side, but it shows up more here. I think I'm going to have to do something to show that side. And I'd be tempted to not put anything else on top of this. What do you think? Do you think I should put a layer of Mod Podge on top? Again, what I think I need to do is do several of the same, if I can do that, and test Mod Podge on the front and the back. Let me just show you that again. It's just completely amazing. And this is no skill, it's just scrunching up the tissue paper
and then applying a little bit of that coloured gluey liquid. Let's have a look at the others. This is the one made with a printable. It was that blue patent printable on 90 GSM paper. I've still got a rather sludgy, ugly area that's damp there, so I'll just let that dry, but I think it will look good when it's done. What I like about this is the variation. So I do like, I've got my copper bed of a river here, and I've got plenty of lines. However, there's no way that this is going to detach itself from the brown paper behind, so I'm going to have to use it as it is. How flexible is it? The paper itself is flexible because of the humectant that we added, but having added it to the brown paper and attached it to that through this process, I'm going to have to use it with the brown paper behind. That's okay, I'll use everything, but it's not what I wanted. So this is a very interesting result, and I really like this one. And you can see that it hasn't attached itself to the brown paper behind, so it's independent and I can do anything with it. The colour just works for me. It is the colour of brown leather, I think, and I can still see a little bit of those letters coming through. I've got variation in the colour. I can probably see a bit more myself than is coming through on the camera, but I've definitely got these lines where we screwed up the paper, so that's working brilliantly. And it has dried, and I've got deeper colour here and in these areas where those pools of colour, the glue, the water and the paint that we mixed together, was just allowed to dry. I think this is wonderful as an element that we could use to cover a journal. I think it'll look absolutely fantastic. It feels lovely. We didn't do anything on the back, so it's going to be used one-sided, but I think that would be absolutely brilliant in a project. I did promise to share the stunning results of the tissue paper that we did right at the beginning. So the base case isn't too interesting other than the back, which is beautifully shiny, and I wonder, what would you do with this? I moved on from that to add colour. So this, I think, is much, much better. I think you can see much closer to a leather effect. It's not very dark. Maybe I'd want a bit darker, but I do really like it. And on the back, I've got a fantastic, it's almost like sand dunes from a distance, something like that. Lots and lots of this shine, so again I can choose whether to use that. I think I added a bit more colour on this one, and I was starting to get more liberal with the glue and water mix. So this has got acrylic in it and a little bit of gold paint. In fact, I think you can see, yeah, you can see a bit of that shine going on and the gold coming through, so you can see it. This was dried on the plastic bag, and I've got that shine again. Lovely. It's almost like it's got flour in the depths here. It's got almost a powdery white matte feel. And then the last one, and this was dried on the back of the book, and I think it's working really well. I think the point I'll make about these coloured tissue paper pieces is that I'm getting consistency of result across them. I'm getting colour, I'm getting the sense of leather, and I really like the fact that it's repeatable, so you can intentionally go and make some of this, and it didn't take long either. I've got some of that shine on the back again. I've really enjoyed making this faux leather, and I hope you'll make some too. If you do love upcycling supplies and making beautiful art, then check out this video here where I turn brown paper into art, an easy junk journal. If you haven't already, subscribe, and I really do hope to see you soon.